Hello, Fearless Gamers! Matt here for Fearless Games, and today we're going to be going on to the final video of how to play Battlefleet Gothic before we jump into the 2010 Compendium. I know a couple of you people are probably looking forward to that, so let's see what happens. We're going to... Now this video, because this is one of those things where you don't really need to play with terrain, we're not going to go into as deep of a detail as we did in the other videos. If you want to see a more in-depth looking, like basically see examples of this, you can check out my regular channel, Helios Raven's Nest, and look at the, it's one of the later videos. But for here, I'm going to try and paraphrase as much as possible, but give you enough information to move you right along. You're going to see me basically pointing you to pages in the book a lot, because like I said, we've played the game with terrain, and we've played the game without terrain. Terrain really isn't that key necessary unless you're doing like some really big, grand game or some like special mission scenario thing. Like if you're just doing an all-out battle, it's sometimes people just play without terrain just to make it go a lot quicker so they can get more games in. That's the one thing that's kind of nice about this game, is that you can play with or without terrain, and it doesn't greatly affect the intensity or the fun of the game itself. Now, the tabletop effects, or celestial phenomena as they're normally called, can be picked out in one of different ways. You can just determine what kind of stuff you have. Say, let's put this here, let's put that here, and totally ignore the rulebook. Or you can do what, there's like a couple of methods in here, but the one that me and the Stark Lord like a lot is doing like a sort of, dice rolling system. If we turn to page 42, you'll see this chart here that gives you a list of 6 regions. So roll a d6, see which region you get picked into, and this will basically tell you, if it's the Flare region, the Mercurial zone. I am horrible with pronunciations if no one knows this yet, so please forgive me if I'm saying these wrong. The inner biosphere, the primary biosphere, the outer reaches, and deep space. And if we flip to page 43, 42 goes right to 43, you get this little chart here. And this chart is basically a die table for each of the different zones. What I tend to do is I tend to then take like a D3 or a D6 if you guys really want a lot of terrain, or in between, and roll that to see how many rolls each player gets. So let's just say, for argument's sake, we're in the primary biosphere. We would then roll a D3, and that would determine how many rolls we get on the primary biosphere chart. You would then roll a D6 and look at the result and see what it does. Now, one thing, just in case anyone's wondering, what about really huge tables? Like if you see in my battle report with the Battle of Dornpor on my personal channel, that one was a very large table. So how did we fill out the terrain? We did terrain a little bit different in that one. What we did was we rolled a D3, and that was how many dice rolls per quadrant. We broke it up into 4 quadrants, so I think we ended up with 3 dice rolls. So we each rolled 3 dice rolls, made a chart of which quadrant had which for each of us, and then we filled out the terrain, keeping it in the quadrant. So that's one way to do it if you got like a massive table. And if you have a really small table, you don't really have to worry about that. And again, they do put things like probably only going to have 1 planet, because planets stay far apart from each other. So if you want, other planets, you may want to just downgrade to a small planet and make it a moon or something like that. But that's all up to you. Personally, I've never found any real major need for more than 1 planet on the battlefield yet. So we're going to move right along to the table effects feature. First and foremost, if you're going to play with table effects, you got to first determine the sunward edge. This is key for Eldar players and for placing terrain, because most of the terrain, it runs parallel with the sun edge. So on page 44, you'd find this chart, and you would roll a d6 to determine which edge was the sun edge. And that's when you would then start applying your other table effects. Like, the first one we'll go over is dust clouds. Dust clouds are basically, you know, like minor dust particles and such floating around in space. And their effect on the table is they are counted as a single blast marker when it comes to firing, movement, shields, leadership, and ordnance. Eldar, who are kin to really flying around in space since they kind of lost all their planets, they get to roll a leadership check to ignore all effects of dust clouds. Escorts get to re-roll this leadership if they fail. So it's basically to kind of cut the Eldar a break, since, you know, well, they have no shields against this kind of stuff because, you know, shields, you know, your shields affect this. How do they survive in space then? They're like, oh, they've done it for so long, they've managed to maneuver properly through dust clouds and not get affected by it. And escorts are so tiny, they get to, you know, they're even better at it. So that's why they get this special reroll. And again, page 44 will help you with determining size and width for both dust clouds and asteroid fields. And asteroid fields are basically, I mean, it's asteroid fields. You know, anyone who's seen, you know, something like Empire Strikes Back or something can kind of get a gist of what those are. What they affect on the table is they block line of sight. So you cannot shoot through an asteroid field unless otherwise noted, because I think there's like 2 weapons that do ignore tabletop effects minus planets that block line of sight. And what happens is any torpedoes that strike it are detonated, any hulks which drift into the asteroid field are destroyed, and attack craft squadrons or bombers or assault boats and that gist are roll a d6 and are destroyed if they roll a 6. Enemy vessels that are both within the asteroid field may fire upon each other with weapon battery and lance type weaponry. But they can only do this if they're within 10 centimeters of each other, and they they have all their weapon strength and firepower in half. Crippled ships or ships that are braced for impact may not fire when they're in an asteroid field. Now, when you're moving through an asteroid field, this rule, some people have different interpretations. Some people say, oh, you just roll it once and that's it, or you roll it for each turn that you're moving through, that you're actually moving through it. You must make a leadership check. If you fail this leadership check, you suffer d6 points of damage from the asteroid impacts, but shields will block damage as normal. The d6 damage will only be distributed among escorts that actually traverse the asteroid field. So if you have a squadron and only half the squadron goes into the asteroid field, only the ships that went through can take this damage and the other ships are fine. As a note, like with as a note, like some of these things, like, you know, I believe the Eldar and the Dark Eldar shields, they do not get protection from asteroid fields because you can't trick a rock into thinking it's hitting something. You know, it either hits it or it doesn't. And I think Tyrannid shields are also ineffective against asteroid fields, but I could be wrong about that because I don't play Tyrannids. And of course, Necrons get their shields no matter what because Necrons are Necrons. So the other celestial phenomena is a warp rift. I've never actually played with one of these, but I always wanted to. A warp rift does block line of fire, and any torpedoes that strike it are destroyed. Hulks which drift into it disappear and are never seen again, so they don't count as salvage at the end of a game. And attack crafts or bombers and assault boats that traverse the celestial the warp rift are destroyed outright. A ship that moves into a warp rift must pass a leadership check on 3d6. If it passes, it is then placed 2d6 times 10 in centimeters away from the warp rift positioned any way that you, in any direction that you wish. If it's failed, the ship is removed from play and is treated as being lost in the warp. At the end of the game, if you're doing like a campaign or something like that where this would be affected, you roll 1d6 for each ship that was lost in the warp after the game. On a roll of a 1, it's gone forever. On a 2 to a 6, it will come back eventually. On that point, you guys are probably going to have to settle down with everybody part of the campaign and determine the period of time that they can come back in. And with them, they have, now, since they don't get a chart like the dust clouds and asteroid fields, I'll tell you that the warp rift can be D3 times 5 centimeters wide and D3 times 10 centimeters long. And again, this is done, sunward edge, parallel to the sunward edge of the table. And that's all the, how shall we say, that's all the regular space effects, except for the most fun, planets. Now, planets have basically a different couple of effects on the game itself. The first and primary is they block line of sight. You can't shoot through a planet, and the only thing you're going to do is hit the poor people sitting on the planet. Any torpedoes or hulks that drift into a planet, basically, that strike the planet or touch the planet's template. If you're like me, uses the styrofoam ball, which I'm going to be changing, or if you're using the plain template, they're gone after they touch the template, into the atmo, destroyed, crash, everyone on the planet has a very bad day. Now, every planet is surrounded by an area of space called the gravity well. The gravity well has its own effects, and if you go to page 45 in the book, you'll see the, basically the planet templates, the planet template size. So if you're trying to determine, what kind of styrofoam balls to purchase, or if you just want to make, circle templates to make your planets. And then, if you turn to page 46, you have a list of the planet's gravity wells. Now, what happens in a gravity well is a couple of things. The first is you can use this to make a free 45-degree turn at the beginning and end of your ship's movement. So, this basically allows you to catapult yourself around the planet, but the thing is the turn can only be towards the planet. So, what happens with, so basically, the way you can really justify it is the nose has to end up moving towards the planet, It can't be moving away away from the planet. So, the tricky part is what if you're pointing right at it. I guess then you'd have to argue with see what the players would have in mind. I'd probably say you can't turn at all just to avoid confusion with it, but that's just me. Or you'd have to make your free turn around and then do it, something like that. But this turn must be always towards the planet, and ships do not have to move its minimum distance before it is able to make this free turn. And free turns provided by the gravity well can be used even when a ship cannot normally turn, when it's like, say, on all ahead full or lock on special orders, and it can be combined with come to a new heading. So this is basically so you can slingshot yourself around a planet if you have enough movement to do so. And a ship that's in a gravity well may decide to go into high or low orbit. Ships that are in high orbit remain stationary. They do not have to move if they don't want to. They basically get into orbit with the planet and start orbiting the planet itself. Downside to this is the fact that you're treated as a stationary target, so you use the defense column in the gravity, in the gunnery table when shooting at the target. So it makes you pretty much a sitting duck. Or you can enter low orbit. This is a ship that enters low orbit, you remove from the table, and you place on a totally different table to do the that's called the low orbit table. And we'll get we'll get to that in a little bit, because we want to just cover a few more things in space involving the planet first. First is rings. Big planets will end up having rings on a roll of a d6 of a 5 or a 6. Then you roll a d3 to see how many rings it has, and then you roll a d6 to see what sort of ring it is, if it's a gas or if it's an asteroid. Each ring is d6 centimeters wide and begin d6 times 5 centimeters away from the planet. If you get to the point where the rings are the same distance away, then they just end up meshing together. So that's basically how that works. So you could basically have a dust cloud asteroid ring, which can be kind of nasty, because then it's a blast marker that you get pelts from. It's horrible things happen when that's done. And then a planet can have moons as well. A moon basically is treated like a small planet in terms of gravity well and what it can do. And a planet's moons are placed 2d6 times 10 from the planet. Roll randomly to see which direction they are from the planet. Or if you're like me and the Stark Lord that really don't care, you just place it down wherever within the distance that you rolled. And now now we're going to go over 3 more space effects before we go into low orbit. And that is fighting sunwards. Basically, when you're fighting and you're in the direction of the sun, bad things can happen or good things can happen. What this is any fire conducted towards the sunward table edge doubles the column shift for long and short range. At long range over 30, at long range 30 centimeters, the powerful sun sphere, it blinds the long-range scanners, so takes 2 column shifts to the right. Basically, it's so hard to see the ship that you can't really pinpoint it, so you take 2 column shifts to the right, right on the gunnery table. Let's see, at short range, 15 centimeters or under, the targets are basically silhouetted instead, and they make 2 column shifts to the left. So, in essence, if they're 30 centimeters away and you're shooting in the direction of the sun, you take a 2 column shift penalty to the right. If you're fighting within 15 centimeters, you get a bonus to the left because they're easier to see. And of course, there's what happens when the Eldar with the sun edge, and that's all done in the Eldar special rules. Just briefly, the Eldar's movement is affected by their position to the sun. Now, there's also solar flares. Solar flares are just, the sun, casts off, a burst of radiation. And this has a different effect. If you have a sun flare on the table, what you do is you roll a d6 at the start of each turn. If more than 1 solar flare is generated at par of the celestial phenomena, you roll 1d6 per flare generated. On any roll of a 6, a flare occurs, but a flare will only manifest itself once per game. So basically it's a one-time effect. It's used once, and then it's never seen again. Once a flare occurs, let's see. Each ship on the tabletop has 1 blast marker placed sunwards of them. Any ship without shields will suffer 1 hit and will take a critical damage on a roll of a 4 or more on a d6. Roll a d6 for each ordnance marker, and on a 4 or more, it is removed from play. So yeah, it's bad because it's basically frying everything that it touches. Now, Eldar can make a leadership check to ignore all effects of a solar flare, and their escorts may re-roll this for free. If passed, it will take no damage, but instead turn directly away from the solar flare and move 2d6 centimeters. So in essence, it basically moves so it's pointing in the opposite direction of the solar flare. You roll 2d6 and you move that many centimeters forward. So basically they get pushed by the sun flare because they use solar sails. So basically they just get a huge gust of wind in their sails to move them. Sometimes it's not a good thing for them. Doesn't matter. Sometimes it's a very good thing for them. Sometimes it's bad. So that's the deal with solar flares. The other thing that can happen is radiation bursts. This is when just a wave of radiation just flies out and hits the board. And this is done in the same way, where you roll a d6 for each flare generated, and each radiation burst only happens once, but a radiation burst happens on a 5 or a 6 instead of just a 6. And roll a d6 to see what the interference level of the burst is, and all ships on the table reduce their leadership value by the interference level of that turn. So, for example, if a radiation burst occurs and a 3 is rolled for the interference, all ships suffer a -3 to their leadership for the rest of the turn. In addition to the reduced leadership for the interference, fleet commanders may only use their reroll command checks for their own ship or squadron during the radiation burst. So, solar flares are nasty to your ships physically, whereas radiation bursts, they're nasty to your dice rolls and your general, your special orders and such. So, that's the catch-22. Sunbursts, your leadership is fine, but you have a risk of taking damage and blast markers, whereas radiation bursts, your ships are totally fine, but you run the risk of not being able to do special orders or disengage or any other type of thing like that. Now let's go on to fighting in low orbit. This is basically representing the ships being in the atmo of the planet, so essentially they can see the ground below them and it is getting closer. Now when you're in low orbit, ships in low orbit do not have to move, and capital ships do not have to make a minimum distance in order to turn. Basically, because so basically they can stay there hovering, and they can turn without having to move, which is really awesome. But to represent the interference from the gravity of the planet and the outermost edges of the atmosphere, all firepower shooting in low orbit suffers 1 column shift to the right. Lances and Nova cannons require a 4+ roll to fire, and torpedoes may not fire by ships at all. So, if you want to fire your lances or your Nova cannons, you have to roll a d4 to see if you can, and then attempt to shoot the weaponry. Or, so it's basically, roll to hit, roll to attack, roll to hit with Nova cannons and lances. Torpedoes can't be fired at all, and you automatically get 1 column shift to the right on the weapons chart. But now, ships that move within 45 centimeters of the planet edge will be gripped in the heart of the gravity well, and must use their engines to keep station if they don't wish to crash. At the start of each player's turn, all ships within 45 centimeters of the planet's table edge are moved directly towards the planet, without changing facing or turning in any way. Ships, the distance that they moved is dependent on the size of the planet. If it's a small planet, it's 5 centimeters, 8 centimeters if it's a medium planet, 10 centimeters if it's a large planet. Any ships that move off of the planet's table edge in this way are totally destroyed. Escorts and transports which voluntarily move off the planet's edge are said to have landed and are removed from play. Capital ships cannot land. And if a ship in low orbit moves off the table from any other edge, it is assumed to have left low orbit and is placed back on the space table, touching the edge of the planet's edge. A ship may not enter low orbit and leave it again in the same turn. Apart from this, movement in combat is resolved in each player's turn as normal. And so basically what it is what we basically rule it as is, the burn retro special order prevents your ship from doing this, free fall. And that's really all there is to fighting in low orbit. So, we're in the final stretch of this video. There's one last thing that I want to go over, and that is planetary defenses. Planetary defenses are basically represented by satellites around the planet, or basic gun batteries and such, and torpedo silos on the planet's surface. When it comes to ground-based units, they have a 90-degree firing arc from the tip of its, from the point that the weapon is placed. And they, and let's see, so their firing arc is 90 degrees from the planet's surface. Satellite units are even count as being able to fire from all facings, so firing arc has no effect on them whatsoever. When it comes to special orders, they may use the special. Let's see. They basically are. They can use the reload ordnance special order, and they're treated with a leadership of 7 when testing to see if they reload. They also use this normal leadership value for other leadership tests. When satellites and ground units are targeted using the defensive column in the gunnery table, so on the gunnery table you'll see this column for defensive, you use that column to shoot at ground units and satellites with weapon batteries, just like you would for ships that are remaining stationary in high orbit. When blast markers are removed from the game, you take an additional D6, roll it, and remove that many extra blast markers from satellites and ground units. Because blast markers normally in the end phase cannot be removed if they're touching the base of something, this is to get it so, a battle station isn't stuck with 60 million blast markers because they're touching his base, so technically they can't be removed. So you would roll an additional D6 just to remove from defensive weaponry and all that. Now, when you hit a defensive weapon, and there's a chance of causing critical damage if it's not, if it's a multi-hit defense, you would then use the critical hits table on page 36 to determine what type of critical hit they suffer from. And when it comes to taking damage, they work just like capital ships. They suffer critical hits just like capital ships and get crippled once they've lost half their damage points. If the defense ship with multiple hits is reduced to 0 points, then roll on the catastrophic table. You roll on the catastrophic table, and however, defenses never drift. They always remain in place. So, if they become a Hulk, they don't drift, they just stay in one place, and that's about it. So, that, my friends, is all the rules for how to play Battlefleet Gothic, the Terrain Advanced Rules section. I know I went through this really quickly, and I do apologize. It's mainly because that set of the rules isn't necessarily needed. It's more of an optional thing. If there is any major questions, feel free to leave a comment and I will do a Q&A video in regards to this. Or if there's anything I didn't make clear in the other videos, post the comment question. I will make a video answering it to the best of my ability. And now, give me about, another week or two to reread the 2010 compendium, and I will do a video of what they changed in the 2010 compendium. So, thank you all for watching, and until next time, Fearless Gamers, take care!